Welcome to Music in Progress, your window into the art of composing music. I'm your host, Michael Cook, a Bay Area composer and multi-instrumentalist. We'll delve into the depths of my creative processes that shape the music I make. Whether you're a fellow musician, an enthusiast, or simply curious about the magic behind the melodies, you'll find valuable insights, practical tips, and innovative techniques to inspire your own musical journey.
I hate the music I wrote. Now what? Have you ever spent a lot of time writing something, only to realize you did not like it at all? That is what happened to me over the past few weeks. I had a clear idea for a new piece. I knew the materials I wanted to use, and I thought I understood the sound world. Then I started writing it, and it did not work. What finally saved the piece was not a sudden flash of inspiration, but the slow process of listening, revising, and rebuilding from a different angle. The plan for the bassoon concerto. As I mentioned in my last post, my next major project is a bassoon concerto for a concert in the fall. The basic idea is a kind of mashup between a Baroque-style concerto and a jazz piece. To me, there is nothing more American than jazz. So maybe the 250th birthday of the United States is starting to leak into the music a little. As a bassoonist, I have played a lot of Vivaldi bassoon concertos. My college bassoon professor, Sue Bancroft, had me prepare several of them for juries, so that style of writing has lived in my fingers and ears for a long time. There are several reasons Vivaldi's bassoon concertos feel like a good model for this piece. First, they are short, rarely lasting more than 15 minutes, and that seems to be the magic number for new music pieces these days. Second, ritornello form has some interesting similarities to jazz. In a ritornello form, a recurring ensemble passage returns throughout the movement, alternating with contrasting solo episodes. In that sense, it can feel a little like a jazz head that keeps coming back between solos. There is a recurring theme, something like a head followed by solo sections, and that pattern returns again and again. Generally, the first and third movements of those concertos use this kind of form. It also works well for the ensemble I am writing for, since the model does not require a large orchestra, mostly strings and continuo instruments. My original idea was to use prepared piano as part of the continuo group. I still really like that idea, but I eventually decided it would not work well for this performance. So even though I wanted to keep it, I had to let it go. Improvisation as the center. The part of the idea I am still leaning into is improvisation. Most of the bassoon part will be improvised, more like a jazz work, and similar in spirit to my concerto for musician. That feels like the right way to bring the Baroque concerto model and the jazz influence together. So I spent several days, maybe even a week, studying Vivaldi concertos. Then, while I was outside playing with my cats, a short melodic idea came to me for the first movement. As I usually do, I started making notes. Some were text notes about the concept and structure, and some were written out as musical sketches. Hearing the first ritornello, eventually I started sketching the main ritornello, which is really the most important part of this kind of form. At that point, I thought I knew what I wanted. I was hearing a mixture of minimalism, a Beatles-like bass line, jazz, and Vivaldi. I had been listening to a lot of the Beatles in my car recently, so that influence had clearly worked its way into my ear. The melody I came up with had a somewhat 7/8 feeling, and I thought the ideas were clear. I felt like I knew what to do, so I started sketching. When I finished that first version and played it back, my immediate reaction was simple. I did not like it. It did not work at all. The feeling was wrong. But even though the result was not what I wanted, I still believed the basic ideas were good. So I started revising. The first round of fixes. There were some sections I liked, especially the ones more clearly influenced by jazz, but the main melodic section was not working. I still liked the melody, so I began looking elsewhere for the problem. At first, I blamed the bass line. The Beatles-inspired idea seemed to be pulling the music in the wrong direction, so I rewrote it to better support the melody. The result became more Hindemith-like, which seemed closer to the kind of harmonic world I wanted. After that first pass, I used a technique I highly recommend to composers. I listened to and worked on each part alone. I tried to make each individual instrument's part sound musical by itself. This was especially important for the bass line I was rewriting. I revised that line several times while listening to it on its own, and it improved greatly. Once I finished this new version of the sketch, I listened back, expecting to finally be happy with what I heard. I was not. The music was much improved, but I still hated it. It sounded like a heroic movie soundtrack instead of concert music, and especially instead of the kind of concerto I was trying to write. Writing through the problem. At that point, I was frustrated, but I still had faith that the underlying ideas could work. I decided that I needed to get whatever this version was out of my system, so I kept going. I continued working on the movement and sketched out its basic form, how long the solo sections would last, which parts of the ritornello would return, and where those returns would happen. So I completed a sketch of the first movement using material I did not actually like. I also played some bassoon solos over the material to get a better feel for how the improvised sections might work. Even though I did not like the piece yet, that process helped me understand the structure more clearly. That turned out to be useful. Finding the real problem. After working through the form, I began to realize that the main problem was not the melody or even the basic concept. The problem was the tonal structure. The chords that had developed underneath the material were causing most of the trouble. They were pushing the piece toward a sound world that felt too heroic and cinematic, rather than the sharper, more flexible sound I wanted. So, I started over. I created a new sketch, put the melody back in, and then went to the keyboard to create the chords, or tonal centers, before writing the bass line this time. That change made a big difference. Rebuilding from the chords. The new harmonic language ended up feeling more like Zappa's 2 chords, or perhaps closer to Hindemith. I put the chords into the continuo part first and refined them before writing the bass line. As before, I focused on listening to the line by itself. I wanted it to sound right on its own before becoming part of the larger system. Then I listened to it in context and made final tweaks. Next came the middle voice in the viola. It followed the same basic idea as before, but now it grew out of the new chords. I listened to that line on its own as I wrote it, then added the bass line to see how the two fit together, and finally listened to the whole texture. The upper voice followed the same process. This time, when I listened to the section as a whole, I finally felt happy with it. It began to sound like what I had been trying to write from the beginning. I finally liked the music. A useful reminder. This process reminded me that disliking a first version does not necessarily mean the original idea has failed. Sometimes it means the idea has not found the right structure yet. A melody can be right, but sitting on the wrong bass line. A bass line can be interesting, but supported by chords that pull the music into the wrong emotional world. The materials may all have potential, but if they are introduced in the wrong order or built on the wrong foundation, the whole piece can point in a direction I never intended. In this case, I had to write a version I disliked, revise it, still dislike it, and then rebuild it from a different angle before I could hear what the piece was trying to become. That can be frustrating, but it is also part of composing. learning when to abandon an idea and when to keep digging until the real piece finally starts to speak. I am going to be on the road for about a month, so I am not sure how much progress I will be able to make on this concerto during that time. I do not think I will be able to do much with the second movement while I am away, but I am hoping to work on the third movement if I can. And if that does not happen, I will at least try to move some older music from Finale into Dorico while I am away from home. Either way, the first movement has finally started to show me what it wants to be. That is enough progress to carry with me for now.